Chapter 20. When Emily took Angela's invitation to spend the night at her place, she didn't expect much. She had seen and lived in worse places with her father, and it didn't surprise her that she slept on the floor of a 2-room shack in the middle of the woods. But Angela had taken her in, and she didn't see why she should invade her privacy by asking why she stayed in such a remote place. Emily woke, but Angela had been out and killed her breakfast. Angela knew the ways of humans, and she tried to make her feel comfortable even if Emily slept the night on the floor. Angela walked into the room carrying a tray from the bar. She had a smile on her face, showing dazzling white teeth. "Did you sleep well last night? Here, I cooked you something." She handed Emily a plate with a half-cooked piece of meat. She didn't know or wanted to ask what it was, but she had berries and an apple on the plate. Taking the plate, Angela watched at Emily, and when Emily ate everything on, Angela felt good. "Do you want to come with me to the club? Nero didn't come back last night." "Does he do that often?" Emily inquired. "Sometimes. He's out hunting." "I wouldn't let Harper go out hunting without me," Emily said in her naive manner, her voice sounding like a newlywed, wanting to be with her man every day. "I would go with him. But you can't hunt with him. He's a werewolf, silly." "Eh, what?" Emily choked on the piece of half-eaten apple. "A werewolf? Oh shit." Angela's hand flew to her mouth as if a bee flew in it. "Didn't he tell you?" "I can't believe he didn't tell you." She scratched her head and blinked her eyes. "What was he supposed to tell me that he didn't?" Emily said, watching at Angela search for words. "It's not my place to say. You have to ask him." Angela's voice odd and impatient. She walked to the closet and pulled out her only black leather jacket, putting it over a black shirt. Her pants, black skin-tight, fit her like skin. "Do you want to come with me to open the bar, or stay here until Harper comes back?" "I want to go with you, of course. I'm afraid to stay here alone. There isn't anything out there but trees and more trees. I'm a city girl and I don't believe in werewolves. But I'm keeping an open mind. And yes, I want to go with you," she said, her eyes wide, looking out at the thick forest behind Angela's house. Angela and Emily hopped into Emily's Range Rover parked near Angela's red rust-colored Jeep. It took 10 minutes to pull up in front of the rusty nail. When Angela opened the car door, she raised her head and glanced around. Walking to the driver's side, she opened the door and said to Emily, "Stay in here. I smell something strange." "I don't smell anything." "You wouldn't, because I'm a werepanther. I can see and smell better than you. You're a human." "I thought you were human too," Emily said. "I'll tell you about that later," Angela said to Emily as she stooped and strode around the side of the building. She disappeared and Emily didn't see her. She decided to climb out against Angela's demands. As she came near the far side of the building, she heard a loud roar. She had to wipe her eyes to be sure of what she was seeing. It was a large panther and mountain lion rolling and biting and clawing at each other. When the mountain lion caught sight of Emily, she rushed in Emily's direction, and Emily made a mad dash for the truck. She pulled and finally it opened just as the mountain lion jumped on the hood. Then the panther hopped up and grabbed the mountain lion with her large teeth and pulled her from the hood of the car. They were pawing and biting each other and trying to scratch at each other. The panther had the advantage because of how large it was, but the mountain lion was more agile as it rolled and jumped on the panther's back and then away from her sharp teeth and claws. Emily watched in disbelief, wondering if the cats had attacked Angela and she was lying dead behind the bar. Emily sat and screamed, and then a man walked from behind the bar. He had only a pair of jeans on, his chest wide and arms muscular. He walked up to the two animals and held them by the scruff of their necks, pulling them apart. "Stop it. Stop it now," he said to them as if they were his house pets and they had a misunderstanding, and they were fighting to see who would sleep in the master's bed, which wasn't far from the truth. When he dropped them on their feet, they changed into two females, one tall, with dark hair, and the other with brown hair and shorter. They were both shapely as they stood in the nude, and one of them was Angela. "What the fuck is going on with you two?" Nero said, his voice sounding harsh and irritated. "Nero, I thought you said we were exclusive to each other. You promised me that you weren't going to be with anyone else. Tonight is the full moon and here you are with this bitch after you said you were out hunting. Go. I have to talk to Angela," Nero said, pushing the mountain lion. She stalked away. then glanced back. But before she left she came running back and made one large swipe across Nero's face. When Angela went after her, Nero stopped her. Let her go. I'm the one to blame. Can you forgive me? When Nero turned to kiss a naked Angela, he saw Emily looking at him. His eyes grew wide. She's not supposed to see this. She's a human and she has to be killed. You can't do that. She's Harper's wife. But why is she looking at me with such fright in her eyes? Because Harper never told her what we are. Get her out of that truck and bring her inside. You have to put some clothes on. I feel as if I could fuck you here. The way you look to me. And you fought that werewolf for me, Nero said with a smile. He seemed pleased. She could have killed me, Angela said. He put his arm around her. Well, she didn't. He gave her a kiss and walked up the stairs and opened the locked door and left Angela to explain everything to Emily. Emily opened the door, Angela said, pulling on the car handle. No. You're going to hurt me. I'm not going to hurt you. It was what I was trying to tell you and you didn't want to believe me. There are werewolves and werewolves in this area. You mean that Harper would bring me to a place where I could get killed and eaten by large animals which turn into people and then turn back to animals? Can't believe he would do that. I'm not going to eat you. We don't eat people. We are half human ourselves. Now open the door and come in. It's getting cold outside. Come in near the fire. You have nothing on and you're not cold? Angela said. I'm different. I'd say you are. I hope you are telling me the truth. If I wanted to do you something to you, I could have done it when you were asleep. She heard the door click and Emily opened the door and cautiously stepped out. Walking with Angela, she stayed back a few feet and let her go first. Angela opened the door to the bar and entered. Nero had the bar ready to serve customers when they walked in. Angela scooted behind the bar and into the room. At its rear, Emily sat at the bar shaking. Nero handed her a drink. She didn't know what was in it. All she knew was she needed it. Thank you, Emily said. That man of yours is a good werewolf and a good human. He got me and my friends out of jail and promised us all jobs. He didn't have to. Emily smiled and glanced up at Nero, who turned to the right to see three men walk through the door. From what Emily saw, they were just men. But Nero saw different. He saw three hungry predatory werewolves. Normally his pack would crowd the place, but since there was no more fights and pickups in the bar, which had been Nero's agreement with Harper, they didn't come around unless they were summoned by Nero, their pack leader. He never needed the pack more than now, and he wished Angela would stay in the back because she never knew when to act like a beta in front of werewolves. They thought the werewolves were only good to fuck, not bring into their pack to mate with. Only Nero had made her the alpha female in his pack because he loved her, and she was a good fighter and good at hunter, and she was always willing to have sex even if the moon wasn't full. Chapter 21. Nero had never seen them before. They were tall, and from what he heard they were riding Harley-Davidson motorcycles. He knew the only werewolves in the area who rode those bikes were from a gang of vicious werewolves who traveled across the U.S. bringing anarchy wherever they went. Stitched on their leather jackets were the name Chaos. He didn't have time to tell Emily to go to the back. They strode up to the bar. The alpha stood close to Emily. He was tall with white blonde hair and a pale face, but his chest wide and his legs long. On the side of his face, cut from his eyes to his cheek, and then the scar disappeared down to his collarbone under his white t-shirt. Emily never looked him in the face. She kept looking at her glass. She felt the threat she posed. He slid near her, his nostrils flared, and he smelled her. You're human. What are you doing here among werewolves? His voice stiff. She's with me, Nero said, meeting the alpha eye to eye. Last time I was here you had that werepanther. I didn't think that hellcat would let you have a human female. She doesn't tell me what to do, Nero said, eyeing Emily sitting, twirling her fingers and keeping her eyes on her drink. If I remember correctly, you were nothing but a beta pretending to be an alpha. You were letting your pack do your fighting for you, the alpha said. The last time I remember you were a beta too, and you belonged to a larger pack, Nero said, not taking his eyes off the alpha. The two dark-haired werewolves walked around and stood on the left of Emily. Emily held her breath and blinked her eyes. Her cheeks flushed with worry and a bead of sweat fell from her brow. What had she gotten herself caught up in? She hadn't bargained on this. How Could she survive where her life appears to be threatened constantly? She would get in the car and drive back to San Francisco and tell Michael she wanted out of the marriage and to tell Harper to fuck off. Leave her the fuck alone and don't come near her again. That is if she didn't die between the walk to the car. I'm leaving, Nero. I don't want to be here when Angela. Before Emily could pronounce Angela's name, she appeared from the back room. Angela stopped in her tracks. She felt danger coming, and she knew Nero's body language. He was in a fight or flight mode, and from the hairs on his arms he was ready for a fight he couldn't win. The threat was real and she and Emily felt it. The Alpha glanced up at Angela. I see you didn't tell me the truth, because there is no way that this one would let you have another mate. Now who is the human bitch? I'm no one's bitch, Emily said, looking up at the Alpha werewolf. He reached over to her and grabbed a handful of hair and brought her to him. He raised her to face him. Tonight you're going to be my bitch. I belong to Harper Samsa, Emily said with narrow eyes staring into his black eyes. He's an alpha just like you. I'm his and you can't touch me because we haven't made it yet. And he will kill you if you do anything to me. Nero and Angela tried to signal to Emily with their eyes not to speak any further, but it was too late. The Alpha looked around to his betas and he laughed. They chimed in with loud laughter. So he hasn't mated with you. Then when I do, you will be mine because I've claimed you and that Harper won't be able to do anything about it. Werewolves. Law. After I get a drink, I'm taking you outside in the woods and I'm going to fuck you hard. You're going to do what? I'm still a virgin. Emily believed the lie that no one wanted to have sex with a virgin. The Alpha's eyes glowed. He would have her as soon as possible. He drank his whiskey and turned the glass down and took Emily with him as she kicked and screamed and bit his hand. The Alpha laughed at her futile attempt as he pulled her by her wrist with her struggling to get away. Angela and Nero watched, unable to do anything because the two beta wolves were watching them, ready to pounce on them. Nero made one assessment of the situation and realized that he couldn't fight the two, and he and Angela were no match for the hardened werewolves. Trying to protect Angela would get both of them killed. When Harper returned, they would have to explain how they let a pack of werewolves come in town and defile Emily, or worse, take her and then kill her after they all had a go with her. As the Alpha dragged Emily by her arm around the corner of the bar, she bit his arm and he threw her to the ground. She sprang to her feet and broke into a sprint. She had been a runner in high school. That's how she got her scholarship to the university. I like when you run from me. I will stalk you and that will make it sweeter. When I catch you, I want you to fight me. It will make it easier for me to enjoy your sweet cunt, the Alpha shouted. Emily made it to the forest, but she didn't realize that she had made it easy for him to catch her. She stood behind a tree, breathing hard and out of breath. When she turned, the Alpha was standing in front of her. Screaming and running, Emily tripped and fell into a branch and it lobbed her backwards and she lay unconscious on her back. The Alpha stood looking down at her on the ground. He stooped down and began ripping off her clothes. When he took the time to watch at her naked body, and when he placed his hands down to touch her face, a large paw ripped across his face and back, throwing him into a tree. She's my mate, Harper howled, and you will never touch her or set eyes on her again. The Alpha sprang to his feet and shifted, but before he could do anything, Harper had shifted and leapt into the air and on the Alpha's back. The Alpha turned around and around, trying to throw Harper off him, but Harper sank his teeth into the Alpha's jugular, and he didn't release his teeth until there was no fight left in the Alpha. The Alpha fell to his knees and his body bent backwards and then forwards. Dropping to the ground, the Alpha lay near his clothing, lifeless and less of an alpha than Harper. Harper had been a werewolf for less than a month, but he had proven to be the best of the Alphas. He had fought hardened and cruel werewolves and prevailed. Weak and out of breath from the travel and no food, he reached down to pick up Emily and cradle her in his arms. He stumbled to the car and placed her in. Her eyes were still closed, but she was breathing. She was alive and the Alpha hadn't touched her. She belonged to Harper and Harper belonged to her. After Harper locked the car door with Emily inside to make sure she was safe, he looked around at the parking lot and saw 3 bikes. He knew 2 werewolves were still somewhere, and that somewhere was in the club. Harper, tired and limping, wasn't sure he could take on the 2 in the club. When he opened the door and Nero and Angela saw him, they changed as the two werewolves turned to see Harper. Angela and Nero soared across the bar on the backs of the beta werewolves, sinking their teeth in their jugulars. It was over in a matter of seconds as the werewolves crumpled to the floor with blood oozing in their bodies, writhing and moving until their life drained from their bodies. I have to get Emily home. Is there a doctor close around? Not that I know of, Nero said. Maybe I can help, Angela said. You've helped me, and I will never forget it, Harper said, looking at Angela. Harper turned to leave. Your home is completed. Everything is in there, furniture, everything. One of the workmen came by early looking for you. He left the keys. Nero reached behind the bar and threw them to Harper. He caught them in midair with a smile. Take care of this and that body in the woods. Will you, Nero? I'll be more than happy to. Harper rushed out of the bar and opened the car, started the motor and took off on the dirt road and then the dirt top and drove to his gate. The locks hadn't been installed yet because the workmen were still building the stable and hospital, but the sign stood over the gate. Samsa's ranch. The sign just the way he wanted. This ranch would belong to his sons. Driving through the long concrete driveway, up to the door, Harper peered at Emily. She was trying to open her eyes but she couldn't manage it. He scooped her up in his arms and took her to the front door, and although she didn't realize it, he was carrying her over the threshold. She was his bride. His bride. A bride for a werewolf, he murmured as he chuckled at the thought. He had to get her to bed. He lay Emily down on the large bed in the master bedroom and sat near her holding her hand. Then he called Michael. He answered on the first ring. Michael, it's Emily. I need you to call one of your doctor friends and have him get here as soon as possible. I'll pay whatever he wants, but I need him soon. I'll do what I can. Yes, anything. What happened? No. Don't tell me. I know too much now and it's keeping me up late at night. When Harper closed the phone, he heard Emily stir. He moved close to her, touching her hand and face. She opened her mouth and began biting him before she realized where she was and with whom. Emily, open your eyes. She heard the voice of Harper. Where am I? You're with me. You're home. Did that werewolf do anything to me? I can't remember. Everything went black, she said with tears pooling in her eyes. No, Harper said. You know about werewolves? I know you're one. Harper relaxed. If the werewolf didn't touch me, I'm still a virgin and you don't want me. She glanced up at Harper. Of course I want you. I need you. I was a fool to tell you that. Can you forgive me? He glanced down at her. Do you still want to be my wife? How could I run from a man who wants to protect me from harm? I want to be with you for the rest of my life, she said. Harper leaned down to kiss her. Emily's mouth parted and his lips touched hers. The hunger from need and the kiss overwhelmed him. With his breathing erratic, he said, I have to go. I can't be with you like this. Like what? I have to mate with you. I want you too much. I'm afraid of what I might do to you. I want you too. She bites her lip and pull him close to her. She placed her hands over his to touch her breasts as he kissed her. Harper feels her nipples, which are at a peak and pressing against his fingers. He passes his hands over them to feel the warmth of her perky hard breasts. His manhood rises. The heat and pleasure from the kiss reaches both of them and they are overcome. When Harper leans his bare chest over hers, a chill races through them. Do you think we should? I've been waiting for you all my life, Emily said, looking up into his deep blue eyes. His eyes no longer heated and the color of gold. He pulled his pants off and lay over her and she opened her legs as he felt the warmth of her thighs, and then he kissed her nipples and placed his hand between her legs as she opened them. I don't want to hurt you, Harper says, pushing away a strands of hair from covering her eyes. You won't. And then she felt his manhood. Maybe I spoke too soon, but we'll get past that, she said, trying to reassure herself and relax Harper. His warm lips brushed against Emily's mouth as he placed his finger in her warm flesh, feeling her wetness. She quakes with anticipation. He can smell her scent and he would never forget it. She is in heat and he knows that he will have the family he dreamed of. Chapter 22. Mr. Samsa, your wife is suffering from something I can't describe. I've never seen this before. I think she should go to a hospital in San Francisco. There are none close enough that can handle her particular problem. What problem are you talking about? Harper sat calm looking at the young doctor in his temporary office. The doctor's forehead furrowed. He took off his glasses from his nose and cleaned them with a tissue from a nearby box of Kleenex, and then he placed his glasses on the desk. He glanced up at Harper and let out a large breath. How could he explain this? Harper notices him for the first time. He's just a little older than him. How old were you when you graduated from high school? Well, I entered college when I was 16. The doctor watched at Harper as if he deserved an answer. I graduated high school very early and went on to college. If you're asking how old I am, I'm 22. But I assure you, Mr. Samsa, I know my stuff. And Mrs. Samsa is in grave danger if she doesn't get the right attention. I would hope you know something about medicine because I asked Michael to send me the best and he sent you. However, he didn't tell me you were this young. What does my age have to do with your wife needing care away from here? Liam said, picking up his glasses and placing them on his face. Emily doesn't appear to be well, Mr. Samsa. I've been here a week and she's not getting better. Harper didn't like for Liam to refer to her by her first name. It appeared all too personal for him. It was bad enough that Liam had to examine her, and him being such a young man. I asked her about your wedding night. Harper sat forward and glanced at the doctor. Liam, I think you're getting too personal. I'm a patient man, but you're overstepping your bounds. But I'm her physician and she asked me to stay on to see that her pregnancy and labor goes easy, and I agreed. What did Emily tell you? Only that after the marriage was consummated she could feel the movement of babies the next day. And that's impossible, I said to her. But I checked her. And the way they are developing, she will give birth in 2 months. Liam took off his glasses again and placed them on the desk as if they were a weight his face didn't want to accept, and he glanced up at Harper over his eyeglasses. I've examined her and she's pregnant just as she said. Have you noticed that she's unusually large for a woman who's pregnant for only a week? She's pregnant? She should have told me, Harper said with a broad smile. Yes, did you hear me? She needs to go to a hospital because something is happening to here that's impossible for me to understand. I would need more help. I want my colleagues to examine her. I can't allow you to do that. She stays here. My hospital will be ready next week. You can take care of her there. Have your people flown out here if necessary. I can't do that. They can't leave their patients to come here. Where will they stay? Then find a way, or you do it alone, but offer them anything they want. I have to talk to my wife. Harper smiled as he strode from his library he had given temporary access to Liam. He reached the stairs and bounding up to the second floor he ran to their bedroom. Opening the door he found Emily walking around. Why are you up? He strode to her and passed his hand over her stomach. I feel great. I ate enough this morning to feed a whale. But I had this craving for raw meat. Can I have that next time? I would have to ask the doctor, Harper said absent-minded. All he thought about was that Emily was pregnant and how happy he is. He seems to think that he has to protect me from something. I tried to tell him I'm okay and there's nothing wrong with me. Angela said that I'm fine. Angela isn't a doctor, Harper said with a raised eyebrow. I know. That's what Liam said when I told him about Angela and how being married to a werewolf. You told him I was a werewolf? Harper's eyes grew large and he paced around the room. Yes. What was wrong with that? It's the same reason I didn't tell you. He must think you're mad and that I'm keeping you against your will. How could he think something like that? Can't he see how happy we are together? It doesn't matter to him. All he sees is that I'm preventing you from going to his hospital in San Francisco for some reason. I think he's in love with you. That's just ridiculous. She touched Harper's unshaved face, raking her fingers through his dark, soft, light beard. What's ridiculous about that? I fell in love with you when I saw you walking down that stairs at Elizabeth's home. Why didn't you tell me? She said, smiling at Harper. I was afraid you would reject me. I was afraid you thought I wanted you for one thing only and not someone I could love. Emily reached and hugged Harper. She kissed him and he rubbed her stomach. Is it too soon to have movement? I feel a leg and arm, Harper said, laughing. He kicked me. Then he placed his ear to her belly. I hear their heart beats. Liam said that he heard 3 heartbeats, Emily said. Triplets. We're going to have triplets. He picked up Emily and danced with her around the room, and then he stopped in the middle of the twirl. His face took on a gloomy expression. He stared at Emily as if he didn't see her. Harper placed her feet down on the floor, and then he took her hands and brought her to a chair where he sat. He pulled her down on his lap. Emily. Don't know what to say, but Liam can't be allowed to tell anyone that I'm a werewolf or that Angela and the rest are shifters. But what can you do? He knows already. Well, not really, because he said he didn't believe in werewolves, Emily said, watching warily at Harper. I can't let him leave here, Harper said, staring into Emily's eyes. What do you mean he can't leave here? You wouldn't. Her hand flew to her mouth.
No, Harper.
We can't start a life by killing an innocent man.
No.
I wouldn't kill him, but there must be a way to keep his silence. But I haven't thought about it yet. I should speak to him. Maybe he would see we're happy and we're going to have a family. If you could demonstrate how you can shift, then he would know. I'll let you try to convince him first, but I can't promise you anything if he tries to come between our happiness. She held Harper's face. We can't be happy if you kill him. You're not that kind of man. I'm not a man, Emily. You have to understand that. I'm a werewolf and I kill. But you kill not for the sake of killing. You've done it because it was necessary, because you were threatened and because you were trying to protect me. There is a difference, you know. I thought when I came here I wouldn't have to kill my kind. I thought I would be at peace, but now I'm threatened with losing you. You will never lose me, Harper. I'll just tell Liam that I'm not going to any hospital. I'm staying with my husband. Emily rose from Harper's lap. She kissed him and felt his rise through her gown. None of that. Only a few more months, she cautioned. And we will work on another litter of pups, Harper said. They're babies, Emily said, scolding Harper. You see them as werewolves, I see them as human. It doesn't matter, Harper said, standing. I have my family and that's all. That's important. Did Liam say whether they were males or females? Does it matter?
No.
Not really, but he won't be able to tell until you get the equipment he ordered for the hospital. Ask him to stay, Harper. We need him. He's a very young man. We can't expect him to live out here with no females to occupy his time. I wonder if Angela can introduce him to one of her workcat friends, Emily said with a sly smile. We can't do that, can we? Harper said, matching her grin. Well, it would keep him occupied and he could stay until the babies were born, Emily said, leaning to kiss Harper. It might work. Do you think Angela would help us out? She can always say no, Emily said, smiling broadly, because she thought that was the answer to her problems. Find Liam someone to keep him interested and prevent Harper from being jealous of Liam, which could prove fatal. When Harper left his bedroom, Michael was calling him on the phone. Chapter 23. What is it this time, Michael? Michael's voice raised and Harper suspected that something was wrong. He appeared to be out of breath. Have you been out jogging? You know I don't go out for the physical stuff. It takes up too much of my time. Besides, people die doing all that running and jumping. If I die, I want it to be with a heart attack in my bed. If you know what I mean. Come on, Michael, tell me what you called about. Elizabeth filed a suit against you claiming you were the father to her unborn child. I'm not the father, Harper said with a raised voice. I know that, but you have to prove it. I don't have time for that. Emily is having a baby, babies. It's at least 3. And thank you for sending Liam. She hasn't been with you a good week and she's pregnant? I was wondering about that too until Angela, she a female shifter who explained to Emily about how long it would take her to give birth. It appears I can impregnate a woman overnight. Another benefit of being a werewolf. That's what Elizabeth claims. She got pregnant the first time you touched her, Michael said. Her claims are bogus. You know that. You tried to warn me about her, but I wouldn't listen. I'm listening now. There's something I have to say about Liam. Michael cut him off. Yes, he's a wonderful young doctor. He came widely recommended, Michael said. There's just one problem. He knows too much and he's infatuated with Emily. Come on, Harper. He's too professional to do anything and Emily is in love with you. It's not Emily I'm worried about. The man is my age. You're just too protective. I should have sent an older man, but Liam is younger and he's better suited, and I thought he may be open to understanding your particular problem. The only problem I have is him. You aren't going to do anything.
No.
Why is everyone asking me that? Have I changed that much? Do you want me to answer that, Harper? Michael said. There was a deep silence between them. What are you going to do about that, bitch? Now that doesn't sound like you, Michael. I know, but people can change you, Michael said. Harper thought about what Michael was trying to make him understand. Had he changed so much that he didn't know himself, and he didn't know what he would transform into from his experiences being a werewolf? Give Elizabeth what she wants. I have plenty of money. If you do that, she will continue until you're broke. She's vengeful and she's not going to stop, especially since she knows you married Emily. Who knows what she'll do if she discovers that Emily is pregnant. She can't be trusted. Give me a few days. I need to take care of something, Harper insisted. I hope it isn't Emily's doctor. I will never forgive you if something happens to Liam. I don't think he has ever had a girlfriend. He just works all the time. That's what I'm going to take care of. I'm going to find him a distraction until my babies are born and he can concentrate on a woman and not my Emily. When Harper walked into the dining room after a long conversation with Michael, he heard Emily's voice. She was sitting at the table and eating her lunch and laughing with Liam. He stood longer than he should to listen to their conversation before he opened the door. Where did you and Mr. Samsa meet? Emily looked up from her plate of broiled salmon and vegetables. She was just getting started. She appeared constantly hungry. Liam watched as she downed a whole salmon. You have a healthy appetite. Placing a fork down, she said. I met Harper in San Francisco. I worked for him as his maid. Does that surprise you? She waited for his reaction.
Liam shrugged. No.
I'm not surprised by anything. I'm a doctor, remember? When you have an attractive young woman like yourself and you're constantly near a young man, I wouldn't be surprised at what could occur. Emily reached for fresh baked bread. Liam picked up the plate and handed it to her with a smile. She said thanks, and seeing the look on Liam's face, she thought she should say something. These little wolves I'm carrying are hungry. She patted her large belly. Why do you call them wolves? Liam questioned as he watched at her. Because that's what they are. Wolves. Pups. Don't you think there's something strange about you referring to your children as wolves and pups? Liam questioned. What should I call them? They aren't children in that sense, and they aren't wolves, but they are my babies and I can call them what I want, Harper said. They're pups. Like in dogs, Liam said with two raised eyebrows and a furrowed brow.
No.
Not like dogs. They are werewolves. I think my wife explained to you what they are, Harper said, stepping into the dining room and closing the door behind him. It was then Liam noticed something different about Harper. His eyes had a tendency to change with his mood. There was a reddish color to them, his nostrils flaring, and now he wore a serious, sour look on his face. Liam for the first time realized that he was dealing with something unusual, something he knew little about. Harper stood behind Emily, pushed her hair to the side, kissed her on the shoulder and then her cheek, and sat on her left-hand side. He leaned to look at Liam. When are you leaving? His voice cold and flat, and then he shot Liam a close smile. I thought you wanted me to stay on until your babies were born. From what I see, that will be in 2 months if Emily doesn't have complications. I would suggest that you take her to San Francisco where she can be checked out thoroughly. You've given me your assessment before, and I've given you my answer. Don't you think we should hear what Emily wants? It's her babies and her life at stake. Emily looked back and forward, wavering her gaze between Liam, her doctor, and Harper, her husband. She sees something in Harper's eyes she had never seen before. It was jealousy. How could he be jealous of Liam? Then she saw something in Liam's eyes. He lowered his eyes when he spoke to Harper about her. He didn't want Harper to know that he was indeed infatuated with her. But Harper knew this all along, and that's why he wanted him gone. I have to go to San Francisco, Emily. He held her hand. If you need anything, I'll be close and I can get back to you soon. However, I might be gone for a week. You can't leave her in this wilderness and pregnant for a week, Liam said, raising his voice in panic. You'll be with me and I have Angela, Emily said, watching at Liam. Go, Harper. And take care of your business. I'm strong. Don't worry about me. Harper stared at Liam. Emily had made her decision and she wanted Liam to stay. When Harper returns, then you can go, Liam. If something happens, I have Liam here to help me. What can be more assuring than that, Harper? Emily felt good that she had solved that problem. Harper didn't want to go, but Michael stressed how important it was to be in San Francisco to contest Elizabeth's claims that he was the father of her child. Emily looked at Harper and he stood and took her hand. You will have to excuse me and Emily, Liam. I have something to discuss with my wife before I leave. He glanced at Liam as he led Emily to the door. Once it closed, he raised her and cradled her in his arms and stepped up the stairs, careful not to hurt her. He brought her to their room and closed the door. Will you be okay with me leaving you? I'll be fine. Liam is with me. That's what I'm afraid of. What do you have to worry about? I don't see other men. I see only my werewolf. That's because there are no other men around you, and now there is Liam. Why would I want a man when I can have you? You make me feel safe and you make me happy, Harper. She kissed him and the heat of her body pulsated through him. The kiss heated his manhood, yearning to enter her again. But he knew he could not. At least not now. Harper had wasted too many nights worrying about how painful for Emily it would be for him to enter her warm, soft, tight opening. He had lost that time he could have taken her out on a date. Now he could kick himself for being ill-informed. Just when he's happy beyond anything now, he has to leave the woman he loves. But he had grown tired of Elizabeth ruining his life, and if he didn't take care of this now, who knows what trap she would lay for him in the future. Harper feeling thankful that he found out about Elizabeth before she completely ruined his life. Now to take care of the situation and keep it from Emily. When Emily had called Angela to her home to discuss finding Liam a girlfriend, Harper was driving up to his office building in San Francisco. Chapter 24. Harper arrived in San Francisco just after 3 p.m. He stopped at his office, the one he turned over to Michael, the one with his name out front for the world to see. His father set in large lettering in stone in the front of the building, Samsa. When the valet came out to park the truck, he glanced up in surprise at seeing Harper. Mr. Samsa, good to see you back. We heard you had gotten married and living out in the wilderness. Oh, you've heard about my property? Harper said with a raised eyebrow. Nevada is a great place. Some places remote. I hear they have beautiful lakes for fishing and boating. Yeah, it's all over the office and the girl I date. She said she got it from a good source, and from the expression on your face it seems to be true. The attendant stepped in the truck, waved, and drove it around and up the ramp into the parking garage. Harper stood looking around, wondering who had passed that piece of information down where it would reach the parking attendants. He hadn't replied to the office gossip, he just smiled and didn't say any more. As he stepped into the building, he could feel his father's presence. The building still bore his father's designs and the furniture his father had ordered before his death. But Harper hadn't taken his time to put his stamp on the building and the many more holdings left to him by his father. Of course, he was a Samsa, and there would be more Samsas to come, and he would let them make changes to the company when it came time. At first he thought about selling, but now there wouldn't be a need. All this would belong to his sons or his daughters. When he entered the elevator, he felt the eyes on his back, but then he heard all kinds of noises he had never heard before, or smells that incited his senses as never before. It had been Emily's smell that drew him to her. The natural fresh smell of a spring morning when the sun is out and frost is on the ground. Like the heavy breathing coming from a large man in the back of the elevator. Or the smell of a woman's perfume, or the smell of a couple who had just had sex. He smelled the odor of passion as they passed in front of him and got off on the 6th floor, looking less of a couple, but the signs were clear if anyone could smell and see them the way Harper did. His sharp eyes saw a strand of dark hair down her white blouse and a long strain of her blonde hair attached to his black hair. He saw the flush of the man's face and the blush in hers as they passed him with their secret smile. The door opened on their floor, and the woman glided out the elevator in one direction, and the man strode in the opposite direction carrying their secret with them. Then Harper heard someone say to the man with the secret, "Your wife called, Andy." Now Harper knew what most men didn't, and it could be a curse or a blessing. The door closed and continued up to the 21st floor where Harper got off. He passed the secretary, who was surprised to see him because he never spent any time in the office since his father had died. He walked past her fast. He strode through the hall, and standing at his office door before the secretary said a word. She didn't have time to welcome him back, which he didn't want anyway. Harper opened the door to his office without knocking, and stopped at the door, closing it behind him. Sitting behind his desk was Michael, with a look of scorn on his face. It was for whomever was sitting in the chair facing the desk and her back to Harper. Michael was shuffling papers and tapping wildly on the desk with his pen. When he saw Harper, he looked up. The woman in the chair turned around and smiled. "So you finally came. I told Michael I wanted to see you yesterday. Oh, if you're looking at my hair, I changed the color. Back to your natural color, of course. Mousy brown," Michael said with cold pleasure. "Oh, Michael, I didn't know you noticed," Elizabeth said in a big voice and a thin smile. "Everyone knew you weren't a real blonde. That is, everyone except Harper. Just didn't have the heart to tell him. But he would have found out if you had. Let him," Michael said. "That's enough, Michael. And what do you want from me, Elizabeth?" Harper said, his voice low but strong. "Sit down first." She patted on the leather chair across from where Michael sat and near here. Harper surveyed the chair. He didn't relish being that close to her, but what could she do to him? He felt nothing for her. Not like he felt when the relationship was new and his interest was high, and he wanted to fuck her. But now she couldn't ignite a fire under him if she stripped naked and begged to suck his cock. "I have papers I need you to sign," Elizabeth said. Harper took the papers from her and read them and sat in the chair across from his desk. "Under no circumstances are you to sign those papers," Michael said, peering across at Elizabeth as if he could strangle her. Harper dropped the papers on the desk in front of Elizabeth, and she picked them up and placed them in front of Harper. "I don't plan on signing those papers because you know and I know that I'm not the father of your child. I'm having my own children, and I'm not going to give away half my father's company to you or anyone. It's for my sons. Don't be so sure about that. You're O positive and I'm O positive, and the father of my child is O positive. I name you as the father. Now who do you think they will believe? If you continue with this, I will go to the newspapers and say how you broke our engagement when you discovered I was pregnant and you disowned your child. What do you think will happen then? You can do whatever you like, but I'm not signing those papers. I came here as a courtesy, and now I'm going home and get some rest, and I'm leaving tomorrow to be with my wife. What do you think that little nerd of a wife will think of you when I tell her about us? She might ask for a divorce." Elizabeth's mouth curled up in a sly grin and her eyes lit up. "Emily would never divorce me, so do your worse." Elizabeth stood and threw the papers in Harper's face. "I warned you," she said, and she strutted out of the office and slammed the door with a thunderous boom. It was so loud it felt as if she had loosened the hinges. Michael and Harper watched at her and shook their heads, then blew out a hard breath through their teeth. "She's a piece of work, isn't she?" Michael said. "I could have someone get rid of her. I never liked her anyway. If I didn't know you, I would take you serious. Now stop with the nonsense and keep her away from me and Emily. I wouldn't want to get on her bad side." "She's a mean one," Michael said. "I know, but you aren't and I am, and I don't want this to go any further. She needs money and is desperate to get it. All I need to do is sign these papers after you make her an offer. Then I can get back to Emily. I will give Elizabeth only what's necessary, but I will not state that I'm the father. She's pregnant at all. You have to stay a few more days and submit to a DNA test. Then you can clear the matter up quickly." "How long will it take for the test to come back?" "A week or two." "Well, you won't need me then, will you?" "I don't think so. I'm going to my father's mansion to eat and get some sleep. If you need me for anything, just call me, and for heaven's sake get Elizabeth off my back." "I know. I wanted to go on record that I warned you about her. Don't start that again. A woman like that can ruin your life forever. She doesn't stop. She comes up with one outrageous scheme after another. I know I said don't pay her off, but I think you made the right decision because she will never give you a moment's rest." As Harper was leaving the Samsa building and Michael was making plans for Elizabeth, Emily had plans for Liam. Chapter 25. "Liam, I want you to come with me," Emily said. "I need you to drive me to Angela's She's the shifter I told you about. Harper said it wasn't a good idea, but I said you're a scientist and you would understand. Emily stood in the library doorway, dressed in a pair of stretch pants and a long blue blouse covering her stomach and stopping at her knees. She wore a leather jacket over her blouse as a layer. She stood looking at Liam reading a book from the vast library Harper had shipped in from his father's mansion. I guess you could call me that, but some of the things you're telling me are unbelievable. How do you expect me to accept that there are werewolves and cats and animals that can shift to different forms? That's why I want to show you. You believe your eyes, don't you? Your eyes can lie to you, Liam said. Harper doesn't want you to know about him and the shifters in Samsaville, but I thought it would be best because you're going to be here when my babies are born. You will see what I've been trying to tell you. He put the book on the shelf in the space where he had gotten it and stood and walked over to Emily. With a broad, warm smile. I'll indulge you only because you're pregnant. And you can't drive. I'll drive you. They walked out to the outside through the kitchen and entered the 6-car garage. Why do you need so much room to park your car? You have only 2 cars. Liam said, looking around and helping Emily into the Range Rover. Turning to her, Liam said, I never had a car until I graduated from college. My parents were poor, but they had me and I've done all right and took care of them financially. That could be my story. I never drove a car until my friend Stanley offered to teach me, and then I didn't drive much because I couldn't afford anything. Had to take care of my father all my life and we moved around a lot. I guess we have a lot in common. But they didn't, but Liam wanted to think they did. When you pass through the Samsa gates, turn right and continue down that road. Until I tell you to turn and pull over, Emily said, turning to Liam. When Emily and Liam reached the Rusty Nail and came to a stop in front of the building, Liam sat up and looked at Emily. You're not going in there. I'm a man and I don't want to be caught dead in there. Now you sound like my father. I don't need a father, especially as young as you. I know these people. And Emily reached for the handle to open the door. And Liam jumped out and rushed to the passenger side and helped Emily out of the car. It was the lunch crowd, and some of the men who had been hired to build Harperstown had parked their trucks out front. Because there were no hotels, Angela and Nero let them pitch tents near the bar. There were no restaurants for miles, so Angela and Nero had fresh meat and liquor. You could only get the meat rare with a potato. The Rusty Nail was a natural place to stop because they had to eat somewhere. Business had been booming, and because of that Angela hired some of her shifter friends and relatives. There were more females than males before, and the men, or werewolves, had their choice of the were females. Now things had changed and the were females had their choice of men and werewolves. As Liam opened the door, he and Emily strode into the bar. Angela had made the bar more modern with tables and chairs and changed the floors. She even had a new counter installed, one made of granite. When she saw Emily, she rushed to her. How do you like it? Business has improved. I say it has, Emily said. This is my doctor, Liam. He's going to be staying with us for a few months at least until the babies are born. Angela touched Emily's stomach and then turned to Liam. It's a pleasure. Emily talks about you. I hope you are taking good care of her. I'm trying to. And I heard about you. What are you, some kind of witch? Angela gave Liam a cold, persistent look. Liam didn't mean that, Angela. He doesn't understand. Angela warmed. Come sit down, Emily. This is the special booth. Just for you. And Harper, but since you say the human is your friend, I guess he can stay. And she led them to the booth in the middle of the room. As they passed through, the men acknowledged Emily as Harper's wife. Some raised their caps and gave out a wide smile. After a polite smile, they went back to eating and drinking. A young waitress pranced over to the table and stood before them. She wore a black and white stretch suit with a long tail and a pair of fake ears. She had pale skin and long blonde hair. Her face childlike, her body thin and shapely. But she was an adult. She was an adult shifter. A snow leopard, from what Emily had noticed. Miss Samsa, I've heard about you and your husband. But she had her eyes on Liam. The shifter, a beautiful snow leopard, appeared fascinated with Liam. Her light blonde hair and bright blue eyes caught Liam's attention as well. Would you like something to eat? The waitress said to Liam. Emily watched as the snow leopard purred when she got near Liam. She was the perfect one to get Liam's attention and keep it, Emily thought, taking a long look at her. From what she was observing of Liam, he was taken with her and more than Interested. I will have just a glass of water, Liam said nervously. He didn't know why. The young female affected him, but it was clear to Angela and Emily. They just laughed and looked at each other. Liam stood. I'll be back, Emily. And he followed the snow leopard to the bar. And she handed him a glass of water. He stood leaning at the end of the bar and talked to her as he drank his water. I see your friend is interested in my cousin. It appears so. They both glanced at them and then Angela turned to Emily. Are you okay? You look tired. I feel great. I just wanted to get Liam from under me. He acts like he's my father. And Harper is jealous of him. He doesn't want anyone to be that personal with me. That's because he's so young and he doesn't have a girl. I can tell by the way he reacts to you that he's infatuated with you, which isn't good. Usually it's the other way around. A woman falls for her doctor. How do you know these things? Emily questioned. Because my mother was a human. My father a werepanther. Do you want something to eat, Emily? Emily turned away from looking at Liam and turned to Angela after concentrating on what she said.
No.
Harper hired these cooks and they are terrific. They cook my food the way I want and they stock up with everything a pregnant woman needs. She smiled at Angela. I didn't know your mother was human? What are you going to do in this wilderness? It drove my mother insane when I left to be with Nero. I won't have time to think about anything because Liam says I'm having 3 boys. You will have 3 werewolves? Why did you say it like that? Because you will be the only human living with 4 werewolves. And I forgot to tell you.
Shifters mature fast.
Before you know it they will be yearlings. What is a yearling? Like a teenager, only worse. They are somewhere between teens and adulthood. It could be trying on any human, especially a mother. I would wander at night. And when the full moon came, Nero was there coaxing me into the woods. Angela had a blush on her cheeks. We finally left together because we couldn't bear to be apart. I'm sure I'll be okay. Angela glanced at her. I hope so. Now where did that little snow leopard go? It's getting busy and she took off with that doctor of yours. Oh well, they'll show up later. I was like her once when I was in heat. When they looked up, Liam was standing near Angela and Emily. I see you met our new waitress, Angela said with a smirk. Emily, if you don't mind, I have a date. Can I use your truck when I take you home? Sure. I'm ready to go now. And she said goodbye to Angela and Liam helped Emily out of the bar and into the truck. They reached the Samsa ranch much sooner than Emily had expected. It seemed Liam had a new purpose and that purpose was focused on the snow leopard. As Emily stepped out of the SUV with Liam's help, she said, do you know what she is, Liam? All I know is she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen and I think I'm in love. She's a shifter. So be careful. There you go with that again, Emily. She's a woman to me and if it makes you happy I will be careful. When Harper was climbing into his truck to get back to Samsaville, Liam was climbing into bed with the snow leopard. Chapter 26. Kim had come into Samsaville out of the snow-capped mountains because of a visit from Angela. Come back to Samsaville with me and you can find a mate. Angela had said to her when Angela discovered the snow leopard's parents had died and she was wandering around searching for food. You can stay with me and Nero. You know I don't like Nero. He's a werewolf and we don't get along, Kim said, remembering an encounter with him when she was just a cub. She had attacked him not knowing he was a friend of Angela's. He had gone looking for Angela and ran across Kim. Nero tried to chase her away but she waited for him and jumped on him from a tree and scarred him across his face and back before Angela stopped Nero from killing her, or before Kim snatched out Nero's eyes. Since then they had very little to say to each other, but for Angela's sake, Nero took her in and gave her a job. But he didn't want her at their cabin and she didn't want to be there. So she pitched a tent behind the bar to open it up early for the men working different shifts in Samsaville, where they could get a drink or food before they went to work on the new buildings Harper had commissioned to be built in Samsaville. I know you don't care for Nero, but he's different now. I wouldn't have invited you here if he wasn't, and you need a place to find food, and the humans here aren't bad either. In your area there aren't any snow leopard shifters. The humans and shifters have respect for each other in Samsaville. They have laws and rules to follow. Harper Samsa drew up the laws himself and if anyone breaks them they can't live in Samsaville. Kim couldn't help but think about that day which brought her here, and when she first glanced up and saw Liam, tall and lean and sure of himself. He was what she was looking for if she didn't have someone of her same species. She turned to him before she walked into the tent. "I've never met anyone like you," Liam said. He placed his hands to her small, delicate face as he let her step into the tent first. Lowering his head, he walked behind her. Bending down, he helped her undress in a small tent outside of the Rusty Nail, in the middle of a large forest. She slipped out of her black and white bodysuit with a long tail. She tossed her fake cat ears to the side. Liam's eyes opened wide and his jaw dropped. His raised eyebrows smoothed and he took a deep breath, wondering how he got so lucky. Liam, too tall to stand in the tent, slid down and sat on her rather large cot. She sat near him, nude. He had never seen anyone that comfortable without clothes. All the women he had seen in his practice hid behind a sheet, and even then their bodies were tense. Maybe it was his age, he thought. Maybe she was comfortable with him, and they both knew why he had followed her to the tent. He desired her and he expected to make love to her, and she wanted him also. "My name is Liam," he said, his eyes raking her from her hair down to her small frame. Her hair long and blonde, almost white. Her mouth small and pursed round. "I know your name is Liam because you've told me over and over. But you never said your name." "Kim," she purred and eased her body up against his hands down to the side. He wasn't sure what he should do with them. She reached for them and placed one over her breasts. He touched them as a doctor would. No amount of feeling. She turned to him. "Don't you want to feel me?" She placed her hands over his, resting on her breasts. His hands sent a wave of desire as her body craved his hands. "Of course I do," Liam said, with his hands holding firmly on her breasts, her nipples extending with a shiver of pleasure coursing through Liam's body. His breathing intensified. "Do you know what I am?" she said in a low voice as she opened his shirt. "Yes. But don't tell me you're underage," Liam said with a huff of disappointment.
No.
"I'm not. I'm a full-grown snow leopard." "But you're not a snow leopard. You're a human. A woman," he said as Kim leaned and bit his ear, then kissing his neck and face as she opened his shirt. She raked her sharp claws over and down his chest. "I was afraid this would happen." She turned away to find her clothes. "Just when I'm attracted to a human, he doesn't know what I am. You will have to leave." "But why? I like you a lot." "I like you too," Kim said as Liam pulled her to him and sat her on his lap. She felt the throb of his manhood beating as if it was his pulse. He wanted her, but she needed more than that. She didn't want to be just another shifter for a human looking for a rough night and a good fuck. She wanted to be his mate, and she would save herself until she met the right human or shifter. She may have been the last of her kind in this area, and she would be protective of whom she select to be her mate. She thought she had found the most prosperous of men, one that could protect her and her cubs once she became pregnant. "I can't be with you tonight because you're a human." He opened his eyes wide. "A human who knows little about a shifter's ways." Liam, trying to remember what Emily said to him. "I know that you shift and your human form isn't fixed. You can walk on all fours if you're excited, or if you are threatened. You will have pups instead of babies." "Just as I thought," she said. "When I get pregnant, I will have cubs, not pups." "I should have known that," Liam said. "Yes, you should. Now it's time for you to leave. I have to go back to work and get up early to hunt my food." "I knew that. I know you hunt your food, but with me you don't have to do that. It's what I do. I hunt my food. I don't need you to feed me." Kim turned away from Liam. He liked her independent spirit. He liked her, and he had to find some way to keep her. "If you give me a chance to learn about you and your lifestyle, I'm sure you will find me suitable for you. You fascinate me. I can't let you get away from me." It was then Liam knew that he would do anything to have her. Yet he didn't completely believe her because he hadn't seen anyone become a shifter. He tried to believe, but deep down it didn't make any sense to him. After all, he was a doctor and a scientist. Things like werewolves and shifters didn't exist in his world. But Liam was willing to agree to anything to make love to the little snow leopard. "I followed my cousin Angela here because she said this would be a haven for shifters, and whoever was here, human or shifter, would know who we are and not judge us." "I don't judge you. You're a beautiful girl, I mean shifter." Kim needed the comfort of his body. She had never felt the caress of a male human or shifter before, and she craved that feeling. It could have something to do with the full moon or her need to mate. But was he the right one? She needed to be sure. His touch warm as he placed his hand on her hair and leaned in to kiss her. She relented and kissed him. He lay back on the folding bed and brought her small body to lay on top of his. He held her and looked into her blue eyes, her pale skin in contrast to his. She met his body and she kissed a young man who had very few kisses in his young life. The feeling for both more erotic than Liam could ever describe. The kiss roused his passion and his manhood. He couldn't control his outcry. And he moaned into her mouth. She bit his lips and there was a surge of pure need and hunger spiraling through him. There was no controlling what he felt for her. The intense warmth surged through him as she sucked his tongue, and their tongues mingled together. Lying on him, she rocked her lower body as the kisses became more intense. She purred in his ear as she coaxed him, easing up until his mouth touched her nipples. Liam moaned with raw emotion and she gyrated over his manhood until he couldn't take it any longer. He positioned her on her back with one hand and, with the other, he reached for his penis, and with one jerk and jolt he entered her and let out a breath and grunt. The intensity of the entry into her warm body shocked her, and long nails spiked and she grabbed his back and dug her nails across and down his back in a playful erotic gesture. She bit his lip as he moaned with the heat of pain and the pleasure of surprise. His body reacted in the most surreal way. His body was no longer his and he was drifting inside her as he reached his orgasm. She gave a large meow in his ear as she reached hers. When she grasped the height of her satisfaction, she hissed, "I belong to you. I have mated with you and soon I will be pregnant." She lay in his arms on the cot and he held her close, not sure what she meant, but willing to stay long enough to understand and learn. He woke the next morning curled up with his snow leopard, and she was indeed pregnant, but Liam didn't know. Chapter 27. Harper, I'm all alone and I think the babies are coming. Who is this? Is this Harper Samsa's phone? Yes, it is. But he's unavailable now. This is Elizabeth and you are her voice taunting Emily. I'm his wife, Emily. And Emily hung up the phone as the pain hit her. She didn't know who else to call. Angela didn't have a phone. What are you doing still sitting here? I agreed to have dinner with you and I can't see anything that has changed in the last few minutes. I thought you would be gone by now, Harper said, standing at the table in the Fairmount Hotel in San Francisco. You dropped your phone before you walked out on me. She held up the phone for Harper to see. Then she placed it on the table. He reached for it and she put her hand over his, and he scowled with disgust when he pulled the phone away. I thought we settled whatever we had to talk about then. You know we aren't having a child together and you continue with this farce. I want you back. Well, that's your misfortune. If you need money, I'll give it to you with a stipulation. But you have to sign some papers stating that we were never intimate. But we were intimate. In your dreams, Elizabeth. Then drop me off at my parents' home. You can take a cab because I'm leaving to be with my wife. Oh, Emily. She just called and I said you were busy. You did what? His eyes deepened and shone blood red. Harper had to compose himself. His wolf was close to revealing and tearing Elizabeth apart. Never had he been that angry with a female in his life where he would feel that way about her. With a coy smile, Elizabeth relaxed and sat back in the chair to finish her lunch. Harper turned and walked to the side where the valet had his car waiting. Shortly after Harper walked out, then Elizabeth walked out and a cab was called for her. She wore a sly smile, enjoying the pain she knew Harper was feeling about now. She watched at Harper trying Emily's number over and over. Harper rang the phone once again and no answer. When he turned, Elizabeth had climbed into a cab, satisfied that she had upset him. The truck was driven to the side, and when Harper realized that no one would answer, he climbed into his truck and took off. A worried Harper zoomed down the highway, getting to Emily in less time. All along the way he called and still no answers. Where the fuck is Liam? He asked as he banged on the steering wheel. He tried calling his number and no one answered. As he reached 20 miles from his home, he became frantic. His first thoughts were to shift and get there if something had happened to her. But the truck was faster. There wasn't a way he could travel over 100 miles an hour. And when he looked down, it had a speed of 140. He slowed the truck because it wouldn't do any good for him to kill himself. And then where would Emily be with 3 werewolf sons and not a father to teach them how to live as werewolves? His heart raced as he neared the driveway to his ranch. Driving through the gate, he saw lights on in the house. There were no cars parked out front. He drove to the front door, turned off the motor, and hopped out. The door wasn't locked and he swung the door open. He yelled for Emily. Emily! Emily! Where are you? He took to the stairs 2 steps at a time. Rounded the corner to their bedroom. He opened the door with a bang. She wasn't there. He stood staring at the bed. No one had slept there. There was silence all through the house except for the sounds he heard on the outside. Maybe she fell in the yard. He rushed down the stairs and through the entrance to the kitchen and then outside, and he didn't stop running until he reached the small hospital. He heard the sound of someone talking. It was Emily. His steps slow and measured, he walked like a ghost to the room where he heard her voice. She was lying in bed, and with her she held his 3 sons. Where is everyone? You're all alone here, Emily, he said, breathless.
No.
I'm not alone. I'm here with your sons. And as you can see, we are all doing fine. Her voice shaky but strong. Harper sank in the chair near the bed, then jumped to his feet. They are all for me. And he reached and took all 3 and held them in his large hands. They appeared to be so small. Angela says they start out very small, but that changes very fast. She just didn't say that I would have these babies this soon. I wasn't expecting this. I don't have the nursery ready yet. I'm sure they won't need the nursery for long. But it's nice to have it, Emily said. Where is everyone? The cook you hired to prepare my food. She and her daughter helped me deliver your sons. Isn't that great? I mean, where is your doctor? Where is Liam? He met this shifter and I haven't seen him in a day or 2. Harper glanced around and placed the babies near Emily. I have to get a nurse here. That's taken care of. The cook's daughter is a nurse and she's coming back in a few. She just left to take her mother home. They have a long drive and I think they should stay with us until you build those apartments you were talking about, Emily said, looking to Harper. You're right, Emily. And I'm sorry about Elizabeth. I'm too happy to talk about her. I'm sure she did that on purpose. I know her better than you. Harper leaned over Emily and kissed her. He kissed his sons. Happiness filled his life and he wouldn't let anyone take his joy from him. Especially Elizabeth. And he knew Emily felt the same. I've named the first one. I call him Wilder. He's my strong one. The leader. Because he wanted to come first. And the last one is my easy calm one. I call him Drayton. And you can name the one that is biting and kicking. What will you call him? Emily said, looking up at Harper, who smiled. He looked at the middle one and placed his large finger in his small hand, and he smiled at Harper, or it looked like a smile. He's going to be trouble. I'll call him Lysol. Why? Emily said. No particular reason. Chapter 28. As the 3 young werewolves grew and became teenagers, Harper was growing with them. He had built them a town with schools, department stores, and a hospital. He brought in doctors and teachers from California to New York to give the children and his werewolf pups the best education they could get outside of Samsaville. And Emily would be a teacher to them as well, teaching them how to live in the world of humans. Another lesson they would need in order to exist in a world of men. Michael handed each new resident to Samsaville a contract. It was a non-disclosure and binding, along with the agreement to never mention that the town was a haven to all werewolves and humans who wanted to live by the shifter laws Harper had imposed on the inhabitants of the town. As well as being responsible citizens, they were given a substantial salary with housing to live and work in Samsaville for as long as they wanted. After Harper discovered Liam was no longer a threat to him, he and Liam became friends. After all, they were the same age. Liam, I have to take my sons out to teach them to become what they are. They are hunters and they are men. They know how to be men. They don't know how to be werewolves. I want you and your wife to look after Emily while I'm gone. When school is out for the summer, we will head north to Canada and Alaska. Here there are shifters there who may be interested in forming an alliance with me. We can see to Emily. I've never been as happy as I have been since I met Kim. Maybe we'll go into San Francisco. Kim has never seen the place. My sons are becoming yearlings and I need your assistance. But it can wait until you return. If they were old enough, I would send them with you. Maybe next time. Emily wants to check on her father and she's excited about just seeing how much the city has changed in 2 years. Harper glanced at his watch. I have a meeting at the high school. Who is it this time? Do you have to ask? It's Lysel as usual. Liam saw the pain on Harper's face. I won't keep you. When Harper walked into the principal's office, Wilder and Drayton were sitting on the outside looking at Lysel through the glass walls. Lysel was sitting in a corner behind closed doors away from the others. What's this about? I don't know, Father, Drayton said, standing when his father entered. Wilder glanced up and didn't answer. However, Wilder's eyes told it all to Harper. Had to do with a female. And the female was the principal's daughter. Harper walked into the office without knocking. You aren't supposed to question my sons and have them assemble and sit outside your office as if they all were suspects to be rounded up. Harper looked to Lysel sitting with a smirk on his face. Mr. Samsa, will you sit down? I have to explain to you why I have Lysel here. And the other two outside. Harper stood. Lysel has been dating my daughter. Yes, she is a pretty girl. Has he been respectful of her? Why, yes. Has he shown you respect? Of course. Then what's the problem? He's been visiting her in the middle of the night. Harper turned to Lysel with a jerk of his body. I just wanted to watch her sleep. She's beautiful when she's sleeping. Can you see what I'm talking about, Mr. Samsa? That's just not appropriate. She woke up and he was sitting in her room. When I heard moaning and groaning, you can see why I burst into the room. And were they doing anything? We were just kissing, Father, Lysel interrupted. Do not interrupt me or Mr. Kaiser, Harper said with a closed smile and steel in his eyes. I don't think they were doing anything, but I can't have him jumping in my daughter's window at night. I want her to finish high school, and the way things are going, that may never happen. She could come up pregnant. I see your point, but I don't understand why you have my two other boys sitting out there. Because they wouldn't let Lysel come to my office without them. That is unusual, but then when they are in the same classes it makes for a difficult time for me as well as any teacher who has to teach them. For example, in biology class, the teacher was explaining the anatomy of a young man their age, and he showed the reproductive organs of a man. Lysel argued that this wasn't in every case the penis had to be of a certain size. When the teacher stated he had never seen one that would be larger than the standard size, Lysel offered to show his as an example to the class, and not everyone had a standard size penis. One size doesn't fit all is what I said, Lysel said as Harper swung a sour look at him. Harper sat down and glanced at Lysel. Lysel hunched his shoulder because everything the principal said was true. I just wanted to show him that his claims weren't true, Lysel said. Couldn't you let him assume what he wanted? He was saying this as if it was a fact, and Mother always said that if you could prove a fact is not a fact, you have a right to prove it, and I was just trying to prove that not all penis were not the same by showing him. And the class, the principal exclaimed. Wilder and Drayton were willing to demonstrate what the teacher had said wasn't a fact, Lysel said. Do you see why I have all three of them in my office? Somewhat. He stood and tapped Lysel on the shoulder, and Lysel stood as well. Go out and sit with your brothers. Lysel turned and walked out of the room and closed the door behind. It didn't matter if the door was closed, they could hear the conversation. I understand what you have to deal with, but these are my sons and this is my town. I gave jobs to everyone because of my sons, not in spite of them. I will handle the situation about your daughter. There will be no more visits to your daughter's room at night or any other time. Wilder, Lysel, and Drayton saw their father shake hands, and then Harper turned, leaving the room and closing the door behind him. Harper stood in front of them with a gray look. Go to class, but I want to see all of you in my library after school. They glanced at each other and walked back to class. When class was over, they rode home in their trucks. They climbed out in a somber mood. We have a football game coming up. Now what's, Lysel? Are you trying to get us benched? Wilder said, looking at Lysel, who stood already 6 feet, just an inch shy of Wilder, with Drayton the tallest of the three. I didn't show the class my cock, although the girls were dying to get a peek at it. Yeah, because that's all you talk about in class, Drayton said, leaning on the door of his truck and delaying the inevitable, learning what his father had in store for them. I'm bored. We're all bored. Mother taught us about our bodies and all that other human shit we need to know about. When we tested and we are well above our age and grade level. I could get my PhD if I wanted. PhD in stupidity and arrogance, Wilder said. You can't be sneaking out of the house during the full moon and we aren't going to cover for you anymore. Father knows about it and he is going to blame all of us if you do it. Again. You're just accusing me because you don't have the balls to roam around and see what the world is like outside of Samsaville. I'll have you know I don't just visit the principal's daughter, she just happens to be the one I haven't fucked yet, Lysel said. Wilder let out a hard breath through his teeth. You're impossible. And he strutted to the house with Drayton following behind him. Lysel tucked his hands into his jeans and reluctantly entered through the kitchen. I'm hungry, he said to the cook. You have to see your father first. He said not to put out your food until he's done talking to all of you. Lysel touched a piece of salmon and the cook slapped his hand. He glanced at her with a grieved look with the sides of his mouth turned downward. She knew his look as well as the rest and she didn't soften to it. Lysel had been a handful since he was a pup with his mischievous behavior. It was time someone stopped him before he became a yearling and out of control where no one would be able to rein in his outrageous antics, she thought.